feature constellation Perseus on episode 444 of the Actual Astronomy Podcast. I'm Chris, and joining me is Shane. We are amateur astronomers who love looking up the night sky, and this podcast is for everybody who enjoys going out under the stars. Guess we had a bit of a break in the recording there, Shane.
Yeah, we did, but we're back now. So we missed a week. I did send a tweet out just saying, "Hey, we're not dropping an episode this week," but I'm pretty sure there's a lot of folks that never saw that. But we really don't have any better means to get the message out because we're not too active on social media. But
No.
Regardless, here we are.
Yeah, I was away on vacation for 10 days, and then I got COVID coming back, which really sucked.
Yeah.
So
It's good that you're back and sounding better.
Yeah, it's been it seems like it's been a while, a few weeks anyway, because I think we recorded a little bit earlier, so it might be even a month since we recorded, which seems I think that's the biggest break we've had, if that's the case.
Yeah, it's been quite a while, because we put we recorded a couple episodes so that when you were gone, we were covered, and then the untimely COVID.
Yeah, I was looking. It looks like the last one we dropped was on the 5th, so that's 2 weeks since this one will come out. Been doing some other stuff. Finalized, just like literally, this just in. This came in about an hour ago. I finalized the RASC Observer's calendar for 2025. So
Okay.
that's no small thing either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, probably good to have that off your plate.
Yeah, because I'm the editor for the RASC Observer's calendar, which is largely volunteer role. And that is a pile, like a ton of work to put together each year. So try to get it done by mid-August-ish, end of August. And I just got the final first proof there. So there's probably still going to be a few edits and some minor things of that nature. However, it's largely a done deal.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm rebooting my astronomy class for this autumn at the university. So I've been working a little bit on that as well.
In person?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I was doing in person. I was doing in person back before there were people, Shane.
Wow, look at you.
No, in person I did a few during COVID, but I was like one of the first classes back, I think. I only did it for a year or something like that, and then went back, did it for a year or so in person, and then they had canceled like the whole program, not just my class, but the whole thing. So they've revamped it all, and they've asked me to come and do just a 4-week session. So looking forward to that this autumn. I can't remember the dates, but it should be good.
Cool.
And then my builder came by when we were here kind of being sick and put the angle iron in and another couple 100 pounds of cement into the observatory pier. So I think that should do the trick.
Okay, that's awesome. So when do you get the mount back in and all of that kind of stuff? And then, the 7-inch, that's what we're all super curious about.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a long process. Apparently it takes, like he said, probably a week or 10 days for the cement to cure enough. It takes 28 days for it to fully cure.
Mm-hmm.
So that would put it mid-September, really is probably what we're looking at. There's also about 3 or 4 more things that need to be done. I'm going to see if he can do them while we're waiting for that. One is to get the shelves in.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to see if I can chat to him today about doing that sooner than later. And then I can that pretty much would be it for the interior. At that point, it would really be done. And then I could just do my last bit of priming on those pieces of wood he puts in for shelves, do my last interior coat, and then put the floor down. But so I'm going to say about this time next year.
All right.
But realistically, just depends on when he can do that. But maybe a month. I'm gonna kind of go with that 28 days from Wednesday when he did the work. I'm gonna say that's probably the date I'm looking at. I got the ADM plates or saddles here to hold whatever plates they take. They're the dual ones,
Oh
which
yeah.
is sort of good, I guess. I got the I had ordered the dual for the counterweight side and then just the Losmandy for the other side. So with the telescopes, as you know, Shane, but some listeners may or may not know, with telescopes, whether it's a refractor, spectroscopy, whatever it is, if you're putting on an amount of some sort, you're going to need to have rings and then a plate to attach it to the mount. And the two main plates are a Vixen style, which are narrow plates. What are they, about maybe 2 inches or something like that?
Yeah,
And then
they would be the most common by far.
yeah, they're the most common. And then you have Losmandy plates, which are about 3 inches or so. And once you get up to a certain size telescope, you may want to be using the slightly thicker but thinner plate like the Losmandy. And my 7 inch takes the Losmandy. So I had ordered just the Losmandy for the side that the 7 inch is going to go on, thinking that, well, that'll be fine. It's slightly less money, and then because that's what's on there, that's what I'll use. Um, but they sent me a dual plate for that
Oh,
side
okay.
too. So I have dual for both. I guess maybe it doesn't matter. I mean, it's more expensive to go with the dual plate, and not that it matters that much. I think it was $30 American difference,
Hmm.
but I had been kind of, I guess, hoping not to have the dual plate because I think the single Losmandy would put the center of gravity another, whatever it is, 3 or 4 millimeters closer to the center of the mount. Anyway, but I guess probably doesn't make that much of a difference.
Yeah, hopefully
Um,
it's not noticeable.
mm, yeah, it's probably not. And I got it here now. Like if I send it back, I mean, it would cost me a fortune
Yeah.
because it was like $60 American just to mail these. So, but I got to get the way these attach. I never taken apart a mount before. I haven't. I guess I haven't really, but I've taken these plate or these saddles off. Is they have like these discs, and these discs go inside. They're like male discs. They go inside like a female disc, and then you have these grub screws that are what are they, like 120 degrees or something apart. And I really want to replace those grub screws. So I'm trying to figure out the sizing for those grub screws that are in there. Having trouble doing that. I'm not really that mechanically inclined. So anyway, trying to sort that out, chatting with a couple people online and see if I can figure that one out. Because the ones that are there, I'm worried they're going to strip. They're just like regular steel, I think. And it would be nice to get some stainless steel ones.
Mm.
I think to put in there, and then I'd be rocking and rolling. But that may take a couple weeks to sort out anyway. So that's kind of where we're at with that.
Okay, right on. Well, getting closer every day.
Yeah, well, maybe not every day, but every month.
Fair enough.
Yeah, it's the way it goes. It's the way it goes. But it was a real tough job for him to do. Like the stuff isn't easy, and like I commended him for it greatly because he had to like go in and excavate out, and there's only like maybe a foot and a half in there at the highest point, and where he's working is maybe 9 inches. So he's in there with like a little spade, like digging.
Well, yeah.
And then
When you told me about this, I was trying to visualize how he would do that,
uh
and I've thought, man, there's no easy way. Like that is just
it's
like
bad.
sweat, blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah.
It's yeah, just hand bombing it out with a spade, and
Yeah.
I don't know how much material he would have taken out, but yeah, I
Like
guess
a
if you
cute.
put 150 pounds in there of cement, it's probably a fair amount. Yeah, that's not an easy job.
Yeah, probably and he built it up too. So I'm gonna
Mm.
say it was probably 30 or 40 pounds of earth that he had to take out and put in like an old dishpan kind of thing.
Hmm.
It took 5 or 6 loads of that kind of thing. So yeah, not easy. And then he built a form around. He did it the right way. It's awesome. It looks, and he built it up. So instead of getting, he had to go down 8 or 9 inches, and I think we got 12 or 13 inches of more cement there. So it should do the trick. And 40 pounds of reinforcing bar, like just putting it on the wood, I was getting a bit sketched out. Like it's fine with the 5 inch, might even run a 6 inch like that, but with 7 inches, it just like when you see that 7 inch tube in a person, it's just
Hmm.
like no way. Like it just seems too sketchy for like a an expensive 7-inch refractor to sit like that. So anyway, it might have been okay, but I know that now it's totally fine. Should be anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's awesome.
Did you get any observing in?
Just daytime. I've been doing a lot of solar observing. We've been having kind of that intermittent wildfire smoke again,
Mm,
and it's not like, been a detriment every day and every night, but it's certainly been present. And, that's kind of ruined some of it for me. But yeah, a lot of solar observing in both white light as well as hydrogen alpha. One interesting note with the hydrogen alpha is it seems like the prominence activity is a little bit lower, even though
mm,
the sunspot activity is extremely high right
mm,
now. And maybe it's just like kind of luck of the draw when I've been doing my observing, and there hasn't been a lot of prominence to look at, or maybe it's been a bit of the smoke. I'm not sure, but it's one thing that really stands out for me in the recent solar
mm.
viewing that I've done.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the smoke hasn't been great. It's been particularly bad as we get into the overnight hours. But it hasn't been so bad that we couldn't see the moon. I mean, there was times last year where, like, even during or near full moon, like you could just it looked like a fully eclipsed moon. You hardly find it in the sky. You had to know where to look.
Mhm, mhm,
But it hasn't been quite that bad. Still hasn't been great at times. It's not amazing right now, but it is supposed to get a little better. It is getting better than what it was yesterday. I think was the worst day we've had in 4 or 5 days. Um, but yeah, looking forward to this clearing out. Hopefully, kind of does what it did last year. And I
mhm,
remember Labor Day last year was a write-off. It was terrible. But then within about 4 or 5 days, it started clearing out. And then by the second week of September, we had pretty awesome conditions there for about 4 months. That was amazing.
yeah, it was
So
really good then. Yeah.
yeah. So looking forward to that. So but anyway, so it's not like an entire write-off since the observatory is still getting worked on. So
Hmm.
yeah.
It sounds like the Saskatchewan Summer Star Party though was a success.
Yeah, I heard, yeah.
I talked to there's a guy at work that goes every year, and or most years anyway, and yeah, he said it was really good and had some great solar views and some really nice. I think it was Thursday night. He said was outstanding. I think he was
Yeah.
up till 3 in the morning or something like that.
Yeah, Mike was saying I was chatting to him one night and he sent us a report too after that and he said that yeah, it was one of the best years that he's ever seen. And regarding the smoke, it seems like we're just in this channel. Like it kind of goes everywhere, but then it sort of starts here and ends here when it comes in. Like right now, this channel is only like maybe 100 miles wide, and it extends from the north and goes down into almost as far as South Dakota,
Hmm.
and it's just a bad little spot, really. Like if you drive to even before the Manitoba border and past Swift Current, like you're in the clear.
Hmm.
But right in this channel that we're in, I don't know why. You can just see it set up, and then we'll just get it for 4 or 5 days, and then it clears out for a few days, and then it's back. It sucks, but
Yeah, yeah,
that's the
it's
way it
too
is.
bad. But
Yep.
good for the Star Party. I'm glad that they had good
Yeah.
conditions.
Yeah. I took my 12 by 36 image stabilized binoculars with me and did a few tours around. Tried for that NGC 6231, which is half degrees north of Zeta Scorpius. But I've had luck in the past, but not this time. Had like a lot of, well, we had a ton of sea fog out there.
Mm.
And there was one night where it wasn't too bad. And man, like I always forget how good the spot is. Like the spot where my family is, it's just off the coast. If anybody's been to Peggy's Cove, you can't really see it from there, but it you kind of drive down one of these roads. It looks like it doesn't really go that far or whatever, but it goes sort of way out into the ocean. And they're on like this peninsula, and there's just like there's nothing out there. So you can see like the city lights in the direction of the city, but all around you it's just pitch black. It's so dark right there, considering it's only like a 25-minute drive, like right into the downtown of the city if it's not busy. Um, and yeah, like the detail in the dark nebulae up in through like Scutum and Sagittarius and Aquila, like that whole area, like it was awesome. Like you could just really see like very, very fine detail. It's not like grassland's dark or anything, but it it's really good. It's almost as good as the Cypress Hills, like from right there,
Mm.
because like how in the Cypress Hills you can see Medicine Hat and then some other communities. It's kind of like that in a way
Okay.
just because there's nothing when you look down to the south and to the west and up overhead. There's just it's just totally dark. Like you can really, really see deep into the sky. And they fixed it like it used to be that you could see the odd light, but because of the turtles and different um, ocean creatures, they have put in like these full cutoff lights, kind of like what we have here now, but they're more cut off and the spectrum is slightly better. And they lowered them. They're super low. They're only
Hmm.
like I feel like they're maybe like 16 feet off the ground. They're not maybe not even that high. And they've taken a lot of them out. But anyway, it's way darker there than it was even when I was younger and used to observe there quite a bit.
Hmm. Interesting.
And yeah, we were in PEI, did some there as well, which wasn't quite as good. And yeah, just like I said, there was 2 nights that were kind of sort of decent enough to do it, but there was that one night that was pretty awesome. I went out for a while, but yeah, not too bad. So it was nice to get a little astronomy in, but it still is kind of annoying, like dragging the binoculars. Yeah, like I took them in my carry-on and wrapped them all up and took the batteries out and everything. And yeah, it's a bit of a always feels like a bit of a production carrying optics with you.
Yeah, for sure it is. But I do really like those 12 by 36s for travel. They tuck away into a carry-on quite nicely if you want, and just yeah, nice and compact relative to other
Yeah,
optics and perform exceptionally well.
yeah, like they're so light. Like that's
Yeah.
the main reason why I got them is that like throwing them in the bag, they almost disappear in there because I have to take a pile of stuff with me because I have all these food restrictions, stupid food restrictions. So I got to always take like extra food, and I always like having traveled a lot, I always take like an extra, like at least a very brief change of clothes with me in my carry-on because I've had my luggage lost a few times. So I always want to have like something to read and whatever, like
Yeah.
a few things. So I got other things to take other than just astronomy gear or whatever. So anyway, they fit in nicely with that whole thing. So they're light enough. But still, I'm like always like, oh, like I got to be careful with how whatever I do with it or whatever. Because often if I don't have them, I'll just like throw my bag down somewhere and put my feet up on it or something. But you're not doing that when you've got your binoculars in there.
Totally.
Yeah. So moving on to our topic at hand.
Yes.
Each year, Shane, as you know, I do a bit of an article with a good friend Randall. And we put together a feature constellation or something. Sometimes it's not a feature constellation. We put together something for the RASC Observer's Handbook, and a bit of a deep dive on a constellation is sort of the in general we end up doing this year. I made one up on Perseus, and what we do is we take the Observer's Handbook, or I take the Observer's Handbook, and I'll grab a constellation or an area of sky and go through the handbook and kind of pick out sort of the most interesting things that the handbook touches on, and then as well sort of incorporate some of my own observing into that. So this year I think Randall picked it actually, elected to do Perseus.
Great constellation. Lots to look at there.
Yeah, excellent choice, sir, eh?
Excellent choice. Yes.
So I really like it. I really like Perseus, and I said this is great because I'd actually been doing quite a bit of observing in Perseus, and I don't know if Randall just picked up on that or not, or whether it was just sort of a lucky selection on his part. And then what I like is I go through and then I pick out other things. I'm like, oh, there's stuff that I haven't seen in here yet, so I'm gonna go back and try to take a look. I kind of had hoped I'd get the opportunity to do some of this when when I got back here, but it just
Mhm.
hasn't panned out with the smoke and taken the
Mhm.
observatory apart and stuff. But the first thing in Perseus that I got to say this, an observing session just doesn't feel complete if I don't get a view of the double cluster.
Mhm.
I don't
One
know
of the
about
best
you.
things, yeah, one of the best things to look at in the northern sky for sure. It's beautiful. And yeah, I probably look at it almost every single time I'm out. It's
Mm,
great from the city. It's great from a dark site. It never disappoints. And even like when we do public sessions, there's probably every single one of those too. I show the double cluster if I can, just because it really gets those awes from people. It's yeah, absolutely beautiful and great in a wide field, which is kind of what you and I, with our
yeah.
little refractors, it's a little bit of our niche, I suppose.
Yeah, and what this is, it's two clusters. I didn't put it here in my notes, but it's NGCs 884 and 869. 884 is the one on sort of the south, and 88 or 869 is the one to the north. And they're pretty different looking, but they are pretty much just almost right together. But it's like two little clusters, but they're really bright. Magnitudes 3.7 and 3.8 or something like that. So they're bright enough to see even independently with the naked eye or unaided eye, but you can actually see them sort of as a double lobed cloud. And they are located more or less physically in the same spot in space together, and they've been known since antiquity. Hipparchus cataloged it, Ptolemy wrote about it in his Almagest, and they were noted as like a little cloudy or misty spot. And it represents the jeweled handle of the sword of Perseus, and that was the sword he used to slay the Medusa Gorgon with. So uh, I note that in my observing notes anyway, that 884 has these yellow and orange stars, while 869, NGC 869 to the north has more blue-white stars. And yeah, they're just a fantastic set of stars. But they look awesome in any size telescope. Like I often find with some of the open clusters, once you get beyond even binoculars or small telescopes, that they really start to lose their appeal. But I love looking at it with like 12 and 16-inch instruments too. It
Mhm.
it doesn't really change the aesthetic. Like you really still get that sense of seeing stars upon stars and this, just increased resolution towards the core. Like I like looking at it my 5-inch and I feel like I'm resolved to the core. And then I look at it in Mike's 12-inch under, two or three times the power. And again, it feels like it's just the same view, but it's just more stars and it's a tighter view, but it's equally as beautiful in any size instrument, really, this double cluster.
Yeah, yeah, it really is. And it never gets old. Like, again, I've seen it 1,000 times probably, and I still can spend like half an hour to the entire night observing it if I want.
Yeah. And then nearby, just to the south, almost due south, down towards Maram, which is at the top of the Perseus stick asterism, is Trumpler 2, which is a neat little cluster because it's sort of a smaller cluster, but the stars of that cluster are surrounding this sort of reddish star.
Mhm.
So there's this whole area. There's a bunch of other open clusters to the north, and then there's a whole series over into Cassiopeia, but I'm not going to get into those. But it's very rich area.
Yes, it
But
is. Yeah.
the other thing in this spot, which is neat to see, is Barnard 201, which is a dark nebula, and it's the first nebula that appears, or the first dark nebula that appears in Chart 1 of Barnard's Atlas of Selected Regions of the Milky Way. And Barnard wrote of B201, there are numerous dark lanes or crack-like markings in the immediate neighborhood of the two clusters. A small vacant spot, 10 arc minutes in diameter, lies 45 arc minutes west of the cluster. And that is Barnard 201 in his list of Barnard objects. So there is a dark nebula that is nearby, and between the bright clusters and the rich field on Trumpler 2, and then if you kind of can pan around a bit with your binoculars or small telescope from a dark site, you need to be in a very dark site to see this, of course, you'll actually see this Barnard object. Pretty cool.
Yeah, that is really cool. It's, you know, like not only is it a rich part of the sky, but it's diverse with the different types of objects that you can see right in Perseus. So I really do like this choice, Chris. I think this is
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, it is a good one. I almost couldn't believe we hadn't done this one yet.
Yeah.
Um, moving on, if we go right to the center of Perseus, sometimes this is where I start, and this is one of those things where a lot of the time people don't see the forest for the trees because I'd observed Perseus so many times before I noticed this. Like I'm going to say at least a dozen years.
Mhm.
And that is that Murphak, which is the brightest star in Perseus, it's right in the center. Murphak, or Alpha Persei, as it's known, has a moving group around it, which is, I guess, not technically an open cluster, but it's a group of associated stars. But I think in a way it does look like an open cluster. This
Mhm.
is called the Alpha Persei moving group and is called the Perseus OB3 Association. And it was cataloged. It was one of the first deep sky objects actually cataloged by Giovanni Hodierna in or around like the 1600s. And it was described as a stellar group by Eddington in 1910 and cataloged by Malott in 1915. And I see it as a chandelier type grouping surrounding Alpha Persei or Murphak. And that just makes it such a such a great and easy thing to be able to see because with many deep sky objects, and this seems like it's kind of this obscure thing, there's often the business of going from one star to another, blah blah blah. But here you actually have this very bright star in the center of Perseus. Murphak is what I'm just going to hit it here. It's magnitude 1.8, so you can even see it from the city. And those stars that are surrounding it are actually fairly bright. Like, let's see if I can get one here. Yeah, 34 Persei is there, and it's magnitude 4.7. So many of those stars that you can see in the Alpha Persei moving group, which do kind of look like the chandelier hanging in and around Murphag, are visible from the city through a pair of binoculars. So there's one for people to take a look at, even if you have a small instrument, and even if you're stuck in the city, you can take a look at that.
Yeah, that is probably one of my most favorite things to look at. When Perseus starts to become a thing this time of the year for us, I spend a lot of time in Malot 20. I just think it's fantastic, and it is so large. This is where our little mini Borg 50s really come into play
Mm.
because how wide of a field we can get with those things. It's wonderful. Or even better is probably binoculars if you want to take in the whole thing.
Hmm.
But there's a number of double stars in there. I think there's a couple of carbon stars.
Yep.
There's a lot to see in Malot 20.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just a great object to go and take a look for. I mean, I really just want to call it a cluster. I
Agreed.
mean,
Yeah.
I feel like when people are writing that up, I mean, yeah, I guess kind of sort of technically it's not, but it does really like even to the unaided eye from a dark sight, like those stars are not that faint. Like if you go to like the grasslands or any place that's even reasonably dark, even out here on a good night, if it's high up, like I can discern those magnitude 5 stars that are the brightest stars in that constellation or in that moving group, and then you can see sort of the fainter stars in the background forming a haze, and it just is this beautiful set of twinkling stars across like a hazy background. It's really, really a neat thing to see from a dark site. But like you said, you can still see it from the city. So it's one of those rare things that looks really good no matter where you're at.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great way to put it.
Algol. Did you ever look at Algol before?
Oh, yeah. Many times. Yep.
And why? Why have you looked at that?
Well, I believe it's a double, isn't? Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a fairly common double.
And it's an eclipsing binary, the first to be
Yes.
discovered. Yeah. Magnitude 2.1, and then it dims down every 10 hours or so and doesn't always necessarily line up with when you're out under the night sky, but you can actually see it dip down kind of sort of almost in real time, or at least from night to night if you go out. And it is this red star, known in English as the demon star. The name is derived from the Arabic Ras al Ghul, meaning head of the ghoul. Likely due to the star's peculiar behavior, Algol is actually a three-star system about 93 light years away. And its magnitude is usually 2.1, but it dips to 3.4 during the roughly 10-hour long partial eclipses.
Hmm. There we go.
So it's one of those stars that people should take note of, and I go to great pains to include it in the observer's calendar. M34 is just above and I guess sort of northwest of there, if I get that right. But basically, when you're looking at Perseus, especially in the fall, you're basically just going to go almost straight up from Algol to get to M34. M34 is a magnitude 5.5 open cluster and was again discovered by Giovanni Battista Hodierna in the 1600s and rediscovered by Messier in the late 1700s. And it's one of these clusters though that I think is best in binoculars. It's got about 2 dozen, and really there's these 20 brightest stars, and they're surrounded by a number of fainter stars, including many optical doubles. But I do find like in the binoculars or like the 60 millimeter, that's the best view, like 100%, no question. When we put Mike's 12-inch on there, we've done this many nights. Of course, you can see the stars, but there's just not that many stars in M34. So it just breaks it up, sort of something terrible. And it's sort of like, it's neat to see because you got like all these bright stars in your field, but even in the lowest power, you can't really see any of the structure detail. It's like almost overwhelmed by it. So I definitely prefer the smaller instruments in M34.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I would agree. It just, this is, we should actually do maybe an episode on this, Chris, but of objects that look better in smaller instruments,
Mm,
because there's a list of them, and
yeah.
this certainly is one of them that I think does just, appear nicer or better framed in a small telescope or binoculars.
Yeah, it's the right instrument for the right thing, kind of sort of. It's fun to point any telescope at any of these different targets. But yeah, even Mike has like a 3-inch refractor that he pulls out from time to time.
Hmm.
Messier 76, the Little Dumbbell Nebula. Its moniker is for the comparison to M27, the Dumbbell Nebula, which is over in Vulpecula. Of course, M76 was discovered by Messier in 1780 and reported to Charles Messier, who observed it and added it as the 76th entry in his catalog. It's about magnitude 10, a little bit fainter, making it among the most challenging Messier objects. And it's located just northeast of Phi Persei. I always find that's like such an obscure spot in the sky. It's right on sort of the Perseus Andromeda borders. So I'm star hopping from Andromeda, but it's still like a little ways over in Perseus. I always find it like a tough thing to spot. I was able to get it. It took me like 3 or 4 nights last fall in my 12 by 36s. I was able to get it, I think. It was really, really tough. Certainly you can get it in a small instrument, but I think 10 by 50s from like the darkest, I think from like grasslands or Cypress Hills or somewhere much darker with a 10 by 50, I think that's kind of like the minimum instrument to begin to see. You'll just see it as sort of like a strike, like a fuzzy strike in the sky. And then through the little instruments, you can start to see it's not quite round. And then I think probably like the 12-inch and then larger scopes is what you're going to need to pull out some detail, and an O3 filter as well is definitely going to help because it's a planetary nebula.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Not my favorite object.
No?
No. I remember when I was doing the Messier list the first time. This was the one that really got me. I had a lot of trouble seeing this, even in my 8-inch. My 8-inch wasn't in very good condition, and yeah, I had a lot of trouble finding it, hunting it down. I find the area in the sky is awkward, and I find that yeah, it's just not an easy target to see. There's a string of galaxies running southwest of M34. These are there's part of me that thinks Mike and I hunted these down like years and years ago, but I can't remember. So we're gonna do it again.
Hmm.
NGC's 1003, 1023, and 1058. So the 1003 and 1058 are magnitude 11, and 1023 is magnitude 9.5. So it's sort of a brighter one sandwiched in amongst three galaxies. They're like a degree or so apart, maybe a couple degrees apart, and so the whole string is around 3 degrees. Curious to see if maybe I can get them all in the same field of my 7 inch. So this one's on my list of targets to observe. I kind of feel like there's been nights where I've gone out with Mike and he's just pulled out that he has like a couple different atlases, and then we've just like winged through a pile of galaxies in the area. I feel like we must have seen them, but maybe not. Who knows? So that's on my to observe list from what I have in this list so far.
Hmm. Well, now galaxies are covered. Boom.
Yeah, yeah. There's a few anyway. There's a few more, um, but this one is an open cluster. Now this is sort of a recent one. I actually observed the first time I observed this one, I was with you. We're outside of Moose Jaw, and we went out there. You had just made, I think, or you had your Denver chair. I think you had just made your Denver chair. You had your 12 inch. And
Okay.
this is NGC 1528, which is an open cluster. It's one of my favorite non-Messiers. Definitely, again, one of these ones that looks awesome in binoculars and really small telescopes. Again, the 60 mil. And then the 50 millimeter, it's awesome in the 50 millimeter telescope. But in any instrument, it just spreads out. Like I think I actually had it in my 5 inch, which was just okay. And we looked at it in your 12 inch and we couldn't even see it. It was just like it just
Mm.
blows the stars apart. But you can actually see this one unaided eye. It's like a little fuzzy or misty spot there on the eastern side of Perseus. There's a bit of a, like a fish hook. Although I think there's another fish hook they talk about in Perseus. This is my own sort of asterism. But anyway, just plunk in NGC 1528. And that there again is one that you can see in binoculars from any site at all. Probably in your yard should be pretty doable. But yet again, small telescopes with wide fields or binoculars are the way to go with that one.
Okay.
Yep.
The next one here is interesting to me.
Oh yeah, you've never seen this one?
I have not. No.
Mm. Yeah, this one here, it's sort of a bit of a funny one. I think that the name, so it's NGC 1491, but I think it's recently gotten this name Fossil Footprint. Um, I feel like that's more recent than not. I think that might be since more of this CCD astro imaging has come along.
Mm.
So it's one of those things that's just on the charts. I'd observed it before, and then last fall, Mike and I think we used like the O3 and UHC on that one. It's an emission nebula with a star, and it's quite a nice object in the 12 inch. In the 5 inch, it's you can see it, but it's less impressive. The 12 inch starts to pull out some interesting detail where the O3 starts to show a central bar, and the UHC will show like a larger extent to the nebula. But it's one of those ones where definitely aperture is your friend on that one. I think I tried it in the binoculars. I don't think I could get it in the binoculars. I think I could see the star or something, but you need a
Yeah.
at least a 5 inch or so to start seeing any of the nebulosity. Well, from at least a decent site like where I'm at.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm just reading an observing report with a 400 millimeter Newtonian.
Mm,
Yeah, definitely sounds like aperture is a good thing with this one. And the central star is 11th magnitude.
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. It's good in the 12 inch.
Hmm.
It's nice in the 12 inch. Um, and I could see it in the 5, but it was like hard to say, the hard to run around telling people to go look at it if you have like a 6 inch or smaller scope. I think 8 inches and up is where you're going to start getting the joy with that one.
Hmm. Have to add that to my list.
Yeah, same with the Perseus Galaxy Cluster, otherwise known as Perseus A for its radio and X-ray emissions, centered on a magnitude 11 galaxy NGC 1275. I don't think I've observed this one yet. I don't know. Again, this is like, when I'm observing with Mike and his 12 inch, that's sort of like one of the ones that we would go after then.
Hmm. Yeah,
And
that would
even
be another. good, somewhat challenge object depending on the size of telescope you're using. Some of these galaxies can be a little tricky.
Yeah, and I'm not saying like you can't see them in these smaller instruments. Like people shouldn't read me wrong on that. And certainly people should, if they want to go, people want to go observe them, go observe them. Don't listen to me. It's just I'm kind of telling you, my experience, what works best with these targets, and you can actually start to. They're not like the fossil footprint was easy to find and easy to see in the 12-inch, whereas the 5-inch I really had to work at it. This galaxy again, like a 1275 NGC 1275, I can probably get 11th magnitude in a good night in my 5-inch, but it's going to be tough. It might even be tough with Mike's scope,
Mhm.
depending on how spread out it is.
Yeah.
There's a couple other galaxies nearby. I forget the one. Maybe it's 1270. They might have collided or something like that. Anyway, it's an interesting region. I thought they were fainter for some reason, but anyway, we'll go take a look at that one with Mike's scope. Thanks for the observing report, Mike. Have to read that in another show. California Nebula, NGC 1499. This is one of my favorite objects,
Mhm.
Shane.
Yeah, it's so fun. And especially when you have a really nice dark sky, like
Mm,
the definition of this nebula is unbelievable. Like this sort of reminds me of the Swan a little bit in terms of like there's no mistaking the name and what you're seeing. Like the
mm,
name represents the what you're seeing, and not that it's photographic through a telescope, but it's pretty close. Like, you
mm.
really do take in that detail quite easily under the right sky.
Yeah, it's listed as a challenge object, I think, or something of that nature in the Observer's Handbook, which is fine. Um, I guess it's challenging in a way. I think it's challenging to see it the first time, but it's one of those targets where like I can really see that from like anywhere that's reasonably dark at all. I can get that in my scope, in my 5-inch. It's pretty easy, especially with the H beta filter.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I guess we're sort of spoiled a little bit by the darkness of the grassland skies, but
Mm.
under those skies, this is a pretty easy object as long as you're pointed in the right spot.
Yeah, it's what I do is usually I start at what's called Adida Australis, which is Epsilon Persei, and then just sweep south towards what's the target here? Menkib, which is a Xi Persei magnitude 4. And you'll see like as you come down from Epsilon, there's two stars that are close together, and then you'll see like there's almost like this arc of stars. It kind of reminds me of Aries, and then the nebula, this emission nebula, is sitting between the two widest spots of those stars, but before you get to the Xi Persei. So it's not that difficult to find. It's well placed in a good spot, and it's huge. I think this is the thing with it is that it's around like I think officially it says 2.5. I feel like it's even longer than that, and then it's over a degree wide. So it's really big, and it's I think ideal in like my 5-inch with the H beta filter, which is a 750 millimeter focal length telescope, and I'm using like a 40 millimeter eyepiece. So it's like 18 and a half power and giving like a 3.5 or a 3.6 degree field of view. So it just fits in that scope. And then with the H beta filter, it just pops like it's easy to see
Mhm.
from any site that's reasonable. And I've seen it with like from really dark sites, like in the grasslands or in Cypress Hills or whatever. 7 by 50s, no problem. Like I can just see it, no filter needed or anything.
Mhm. In fact, I've never used a filter. Like, I own all of the filters, but I
Mm.
rarely use them. And I really should take the H beta to it next time I'm out.
Yeah, I mean, I just think this is one of those ones. It gets listed sometimes as photographic only, and people are often surprised when I show it to them. They're like, "What? Like that? You can see that?" Um, yeah, it's just one of those things. I always love showing that to people at star parties and whatever because it's huge, especially from a dark site, like at a really dark site. It's like easy and bright to see, like nobody has trouble seeing it.
For sure.
Then the next one though, this is a ghost. I had to put this one in. This is one of the toughest things I've ever observed, and that's Sharpless 2-216. Observe that last year, and what it is the largest and second nearest planetary nebula next to the Helix Nebula. But if you're going out, you're able to see the helix really well through your binoculars. Like my 12 by 36 is if the helix is just an iridescent glow in those. And oftentimes I can not even see the helix in my binoculars because the sky conditions aren't good enough. But if you get a night where the helix is really standing out, where the California Nebula is really standing out, and you're observing some of these faint fuzzy things, this is one to go for. So Mike and I observed this last autumn with Mike's 12-inch and my 32 millimeter mass CM, and I had filters. I can't remember which ones we had on there, but and we only saw. I'm going to say we saw about two-thirds of the nebula. It's pretty big, and we kind of had to pan his scope around because this nebula is so large that yeah, I mean, unless the scope is moving, you need to be moving the telescope around in order to trigger those receptors in your eye in
Mhm.
order to see it. So you're moving the scope, averted vision, really good low element eyepiece, and yeah, dark night. You want the best night you can get.
Yeah, about 2 degrees in diameter, and it's the closest planetary that we know of to Earth, 400
So is
light
it the
years.
closest?
That's what I'm just reading. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not only the closest to us, but it also appears as the largest planetary in our sky.
Yeah. I thought it was the second closest for some reason. I thought that I got to check my facts on that one, I guess. I thought the
Yeah.
helix was slightly closer. But anyway, it's big, it's faint. I really wish I could get, like I need more telescopes. Something like I'm thinking that the 7-inch is probably really going to be killer on something like that because it's going to give me about 2.5 degree true field.
Yeah.
And I think that that's really what's going to nail it. Something like one of these 10-inch f3s as well. Like with mic scope, even with like the lowest power configuration that we could do, it still felt like his scope just had a bit too much field. But the light gathering on it was hardly sufficient. So it's sort
Mhm.
of a tough one. You'd almost want like some sort of custom 10 or 13-inch scope from a super dark site. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so yeah, that's sort of my last real toughie. But yeah, I hadn't observed that one before. I did a sketch. I did a sketch of most of these things that I said I've observed. I think everything I said I observed, I've got sketches of here from last year. But then this one here, I don't know where you have to be to see this. This one I've tried a few times this year. NGC 1333. I think it's the Iris Nebula.
Okay.
No. I could not get this one. We tried with my 5-inch, 4-inch on a few nights. Tried with Mike scope. I don't know. Maybe I think it's a reflection nebula with some dark nebula around it. Barnard's 2, 3, and 5. And then there's IC 348, which is just down. This is in an area sort of at the bottom of Perseus, just off of oh, where is it here? I'm trying to get you can hear my stupid planetary software because I got the wrong setting tuned in. Can't get it. Anyway, they're just north of Zeta Persei.
Mhm. Yeah,
And
and
man,
this is where magnitude can be a little misleading because I think apparent magnitude on this is 5.6, but it's quite diffuse.
I don't know. Oh yeah, this is all just around Omicron Persei. And man, oh man, that's so tough.
Yeah.
I've looked for IC348 so many times. Excuse me, and 1333 a few times the past year. Couldn't get it. I think like if you were at like a grassland site with I don't know, like a 10 or larger instrument, maybe you could see it. But it's one of those things where it's the reflection of this, so I don't think a filter is going to work too well, and
Mhm.
you just need that contrast with the sky in the background. But there's a lot of dark nebula there, but there's just like it's not like a rich area of sky. It's not like you're looking at the Milky Way proper. So you need to have a dark enough sky that you can get that contrast with the background.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, that would be a tough one.
Yep. Some other stars of interest are Zeta. Talked about Zeta already, sort of in the bottom, very sort of south east of the constellation. But Zeta is the brightest star in the Zeta Persei group, which also has the California Nebula embedded within it. Eta Persei is a nice double star. Greek case, lowercase t, and lowercase y are variables, and then capital Y is the carbon star there. It's just sort of trying to get a better fixing coordinates on those. But I did drop most of this into a bit of a finer chart. If we end up posting the notes, people can take a look. And I've got my planetarium software Sky Safari set up, so I think I can even export the list for people if they want it.
Yeah, I'll definitely post the show notes on actualastronomy.com in case anybody wants this as a reference. Lots of good things to observe there. Perseus, again, just to restate, one of my favorite constellations because there is so much stuff to see. And like you covered the spectrum, Chris, from stuff I can observe in my backyard under light polluted skies all the way to NGC 1333, which is an exceptionally
Mm,
challenging visual observation that requires an exceptionally dark sky and great
yeah.
sky conditions. So kind of takes you all along the difficulty path here.
Yeah, I'm really excited for Mike to get his 18-inch because it would be nice to kind of like we tried for 1333 one night with his 12, but it would be nice to have a go at some of these real toughies with the 18-inch because
Mhm.
then when you see it, you can kind of have like the full gamut. Okay, like what can we see in it? Because if you can't see it from an 18-inch from the grasslands or whatever, I mean, maybe you could see in a slightly larger scope, but it's just unlikely that you're going to be able to drag a larger scope down into that area. So
Mhm.
that's kind of it.
Yeah, then it comes off the list or moves
Yeah.
to a list that's
Yeah.
exceptionally specialized.
Well, the one thing I was doing with that is by putting it in is, saying that it's a great photographic region because I see lots of people taking photographs, even with like the those little, what are they, stellar cats from
Oh yeah.
William Optics or some of these
Yeah.
other small photographic instruments. I've seen lots of people taking these photographs of the iris and these dark nebulae, and I see what is it, 348. Um, so, I'm just throwing that in for those that are doing astrophotography as well as some people do both or maybe even one or the other.
Yeah, that's perfect.
There we go. Well, that's it. Did I miss anything? Any favorites of yours that I didn't get in there?
No, no, you covered it all. Malot 20 is one of my favorite objects of all time. Double cluster is probably one of my most viewed objects. And, there's kind of everything in between there. So, no, great list.
I like it a lot. All
There
right.
you go.
Please subscribe, share the show with other stargazers. Send us your show ideas, observations, and questions to actualastronomy@gmail.com.
Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we hope you enjoyed the show. If you are interested in more information, would like to contact us, or if you would like to support the podcast, check out our website, actualastronomy.com.